Good? All right. Morning.
Good morning.
So we're hanging out early this morning so that we can beat the heat in Arizona. We got our coffee. It's already pretty warm
It's not too bad.
under this tree.
Who knew? It's 6:30. It's not terrible.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
So we wanted to talk today about like what we're seeing with our clients going on. So in the middle of a pandemic, we're seeing like quite a good amount of fear from families, I would say, with all the changes. This is like our second wave now, right, in Arizona, where we've had like, we started out with doulas getting taken out of hospitals, then they were allowed back in. Now some are allowing in, some are not. My families are birthing at home, so that I don't see as much of that type of fear from them, but I do see the fear of what if we have to transfer, you know, and just the general stress level that everybody's feeling during this is affecting all pregnant people.
Right.
So what are you seeing with your clients?
Yeah, it's significantly has been a huge increase in moms that are struggling emotionally and, you know, trying to figure out what the best decision is for their family. And, you know, today is just trying to figure out what can we do to help be a part of the solution versus adding to that fear, and not wanting to add any extra stress to their shoulders, because, you know, as pregnant people birthing right now, it's hard. It's hard for us as providers. It's hard. I don't think anyone is not affected by what's going on, and we may not always share what's happening on the back end of things and the stress that we're having on the other side, but it's still there.
Yeah, it's a lot of holding space and heavy conversations that, and then our own struggles too, right, with our own families and
not knowing what the answers may be.
Right.
We don't have any solid, you know, we can't say for certain that yes, this is what's going to happen 1 week from today or tomorrow.
This is our first pandemic too, right?
So we're just trying to do the best that we can to continue, you know, what are the resources and what are options that we have, and that's the point of today's conversation.
Yeah, and you know, we've been having a lot of conversation about just in general when we look at birth and supporting families. There's a lot of times where circumstances aren't ideal. So a pandemic, definitely not ideal for birthing. You know, we have a lot of obstacles in our way that we'd rather not have. Same thing can happen, you know, when things take a turn for somebody health-wise. You know, preeclampsia comes up and we have to face, you know, those changes that makes to what our plans were. We have to go through that process of grief and now trying to, you know, pivot with our plans and we've talked too about how, like, you know, just throughout history, people have continued to, you know, our populations continued, births continued throughout all kinds of crazy events in the world, horrific events, wars, and, you know, there are awful things that people have managed to still continue birthing through. So looking at how do we find power in where we are? How do we move forward instead of staying in that stress and in that fear? Because we know that fear doesn't serve us in birth.
Right.
So how do we move through that? How do we, you know, here's what is, we're in the middle of this. There are some things we have control over and some we don't. And then what do we do with that? Like, what are your thoughts?
I mean, it's, at the end of the day, it's a choice. We get to choose to stay in that fearful space and let it take over, or we get to choose to flip it, you know, acknowledge it and process it and grieve the disappointment, grieve what you thought would be, and then, you know, okay, there's power in making decisions. So what are our decisions? And we don't have decisions. We aren't able to make any choice if we don't ask, if we don't reach out to, you know, those around us and look at the resources available to us as well. So being able to stick to the basics, you know, what do we have control over? I know you help us a lot in our clients with herbal support. What do you recommend specifically for pregnant people?
As far as like dealing with stress and fear? I think during pregnancy, one of the big ones I see helping a lot right now with my families and myself
Yeah.
is anything in the nervine family. So you've got like lavender, passion flower. Those are two that are both really powerful, calming. They act directly on the nervous system, so they help, just bring down our stress a little bit. And we know how much stress, we all worry when we're pregnant, like, oh my gosh, is my stress level affecting my baby? Those stress hormones, how is that affecting me going into labor and all of that? So using those plants as a tool to kind of bring us down a little bit. I think all of us have a stress level that's much higher right now in general, so then it just takes the littlest thing to send us through the roof.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with our doula Melissa on our team, and she's like, if you're already walking around at a 7 and something just, knocks you right over, and it may not even be much, but you're already up at that amount, your capacity is limited.
Totally.
And that brings me, to being able to protect our space. So we're already at home, right? Anyways, but what about social media? What about conversations that we're having with other people that may affect our headspace, and maybe it's still more fear versus an empowerment headspace?
Yeah, definitely. So I think filtering that amount of social media, I've had to delete it off my phone here and there for some stretches of time just to get like my peace of mind back, because it is like a very combative space right now, and it brings up all the fears. And I don't think social media is helpful at all in calming, except for this video. It's not good at all at like calming us down and giving us some like peace and reality. It's very good at being inflammatory, which is kind of what sucks us in, that level of drama of like, oh my gosh, and I think we can spend all of our time being angry about this and fighting this, and of course we want change to happen with how, the rights for people giving birth in hospitals right now. But we also have to say, like, this is what we have right now to work with. So within this, what do we do? Like, what are our choices? So, you have your choices over your own health, how to manage your own stress levels. I think also like doula support is always going to be huge, even if it turns out your doula can't go to the hospital. Thank goodness for video. I don't know how many times I've thought that throughout this. Like, thank goodness we have video calls. We have, so many ways to still get support, even if that person can't be present in the room with us. So I think still looking at like, what can you do? Even if the worst case scenario, your doula can't come, like, there's definitely things like that happening right now. If I have to transfer to the hospital, there's a definite possibility I won't be able to go with my client. Finding where we can work within those restrictions to still have a powerful birth. And that's always like your job as a doula. If somebody has a complication arise that's going to change their birth plan, how do we still get you the best birth possible within these circumstances?
Yeah, it's, we spend a lot of time focusing on our plan A, our plan B, and our plan C. We're not always, yes, we want to have the idealistic mindset that everything's going to go in the way that you want, but reality tells us, we need to be flexible, we need to be fluid, we need to continue being able to move forward in a positive way. And so, talking about what is most important to you in your birth experience. Is it your birthplace? Is it who's around you? Really spending some time creating that space to sit there and write out what that looks like. And it's going to be different for everyone. Maybe someone would rather have, a more supportive postpartum, transition. And that's okay. We just want to continue being able to support in the best possible way, whether that's laboring at home, if a family's at a hospital that isn't allowing doula support, or maybe switching to out of hospital birth, switching to a home birth, because they want that support system there. Again, you don't have options if you don't ask what they are.
Right, and there definitely are still choices within the restrictions. And I think that is where we find our power, is looking at, even within this circumstance, I still have options. I still have control over a lot of things. I know one of the things that I posted about this week, and that I've heard you talk about as well, is there's a really great resource on evidence-based birth where they have an informed consent that you can take with you to the hospital. It's already made, and it's with the evidence about being able to keep your baby with you. So right now there have been hospitals that have had, if mom tests positive for COVID, then they're separating mom and baby, and there is basically zero evidence from what's current that that's actually necessary. So worldwide, looking at all the cases, most recommendations have been keep mom with baby but take precautions. So this form kind of gives that information and a little bit of power to moms to advocate for herself in those situations. So there are things like that, and if you're heading to the hospital for your birth, I think that's definitely a good resource to check out on evidencebasedbirth.com.
And also, if you are birthing at a hospital that isn't allowing doula support and you want to have a doula there, making sure that you are reaching out to the hospital directly, that you're communicating that to your provider. As support people, we're limited on that pull, but it makes it's more meaningful if it's coming from the families that are going through those experiences.
Totally.
So I would encourage you to continue reaching out and advocating. We can only advocate for you, so much.
Yeah, definitely.
What are other things that families can do, women can do right now to help have some control, through all this craziness?
A tool I use a lot with my clients is visualization, and I think it applies. It goes back to kind of what you were talking about what's important to you with your birth, and I think switching your visual, right, of you've maybe envisioned your birth to look one way, and also no matter what you've envisioned your birth to look like, it hardly ever actually looks like what you've envisioned. But I think there's power in us being able to envision and imagine the birth that we want. And I think looking at what we have in front of us and considering those obstacles that we may have and envisioning your birth in a new way, still envisioning like, how is this birth going to look if it were the best birth possible during a pandemic, like how would that look, right? And maybe I've had some families contact me and say, I can't envision myself giving birth in a hospital during this time, like they just can't see it, and that had been their plan, and now they're wanting to make a late transfer because now all they can envision is staying home. And so that could be your new envisioning, for your birth. It might be just a different setup at the hospital, but knowing that, really spend some time, like you were saying, sitting with what's important to you and really like imagining it going beautifully. I think that also brings down our stress some, is imagining that you can still have like a powerful, strong, beautiful birth even within all this mess.
I think a lot of moms, when we're processing at the postpartum appointment and what their birth experience was, it has nothing to do with the way their baby came out. It had everything to do with how they were treated and how they felt, and were they respected, were they heard, were they loved, being loved on. That's what ultimately you remember on the other side. Real life. It's real life. So, yeah, just something to think about.
Yeah, and I mean, you've talked a little bit about grieving. When these things happen, those changes happen. Like, of course, there's going to be that process we have to go through. So you can't jump straight to like, I'm gonna get powerful in this moment. I mean, you can, but I think that there's
those fears and those grievances are still going to come out in other ways. So it's easier to address them now and let yourself go through it, so they're not cropping up during labor or postpartum and really hitting you.
Yeah. So knowing it's totally okay to like mourn that loss, that I mean, all of us have lost things that we envisioned during this time, and I think for birthing people especially, there's that loss of a lot of things,
community, connection.
And can we talk about postpartum, because how is that for moms right now, like for families in general, like postpartum during a pandemic? That's something that we also have to figure out how to really find our way through.
I mean, I feel really grateful. Our team has been really busy postpartum, especially because families aren't having their normal support systems in town, in place, in their home. So, being able to protect ourselves and our clients, and still being able to love and support them, so that they're not by themselves.
Yeah. So for a family that maybe doesn't have a postpartum doula, I mean, that's always, it's a resource that's available, but it's not necessarily financially available to everybody. What thoughts do you have as far as, what kind of supports have you been giving to your moms as far as just words of wisdom and things that have maybe been helpful for them as they kind of get through this time?
So we offer our free weekly support group online, and we have partnered up with Matrescence and been able to open both of our communities to all families, and also extending it out of just the first 1 year postpartum, but moms of toddlers or older children, just so you have a safe space to chat with others, to see faces, to not feel like you're the only one that's going through it.
So Matrescence is a local group, right, that does a lot of work with the fourth trimester postpartum.
Yeah.
So the things that you guys are doing are available to community-wide.
Yeah, and whether you're in Arizona or across the country.
So how would somebody find that?
So we post every week on our Facebook and Instagram pages the link for the Zoom.
Okay.
It's really easy.
Okay, so we'll put that in the comments for our video, but it's on your Cherry Blossom Doula Services Facebook page. That's a great resource, because I think, just like we've all had to rely on Zoom and video chats for literally everything, and we're all kind of probably really sick of it, but it is still a way to connect. Like, it's basically all we've got right now. So finding, staying in touch.
It's not perfect.
No.
We would rather be in person, and that connection's missing 100%. But if nothing else, I think this time has taught us that we just have to be flexible. We have to pivot. We have to continue, doing the best we can with what we've been given, and that's something that we can continue offering as a way to continue supporting.
Yeah. And I know for a lot of my family's postpartum, that's been their, video calls have been what's kept them going. And, so many of them have told me, like, my mom hasn't gotten to meet my baby yet. The baby's 2 months old, and that's never what we anticipate. You look forward to your family getting to meet your new baby. So having that video access at least is something. So again, it's finding, these are restrictions that none of us want to be working with, obviously, and finding ways to still work within that.
We're doing our best, right?
Yeah, everybody is. Yeah.
That's all that we're asking, of you guys, is just to do your best. It's enough, whatever capacity that is.
Yeah. But I do want to speak to something too that I was just reading some research yesterday about the rates of depression and anxiety that they're seeing in pregnancy during this pandemic, and they're definitely seeing an elevation.
Absolutely.
Obviously, I mean, I think it's kind of like a no-brainer, right? I think we're all feeling a lower level with mood, and but definitely, in pregnancy and postpartum, like, my big worry is for postpartum. We already have such a high incidence of postpartum depression, then add in this extra level of isolation. We always feel some level of isolation in postpartum anyway, and then add in this. What kind of resources can, besides being able to do meetups and things like that, if you're, a family that's struggling with depression and anxiety during your pregnancy, during your postpartum, where do we go?
We have so many different resources here locally, especially for pregnant postpartum women and their families. So we just updated our resource list. So I would love to be able to put that in the comments and have that in your guys' back pocket. If you feel like, I don't know, I just can't shake it, or you're doing all of the self-care things, taking your supplements, vitamin D, movement, these are things that really cost little to no money. But if it's not working and you need an extra layer of support, please reach out to one of the resources that we have available. Mental health is so important, and we just want our moms to be strong, our families to be strong, so that you can take care of your babies in the best possible way.
Do you have anything else to add? I think we've covered, the majority.
What were we talking about before we started that podcast?
Oh, the podcast. Yeah. So we were listening to a podcast. What was the name of the the person on there? Do you remember? It was a
Still too early.
Too early in the morning. We haven't drank all our coffee yet. I want to give credit. So it was Jenna Kutcher's podcast, Gold Digger, and she had a guest on, and her guest was talking, and she said something that fit perfectly into this conversation. Do you want to just share? We aren't going to tell you about it, though. We're going to keep it to ourselves. She said something about, like, look at the situation and then what are the facts, right?
Sorry,
Okay.
I really need it.
We got this. It's
Yeah.
all good.
So there's the mom brain, the baby brain. It doesn't ever really go away.
Well, there's doula brain and midwife brain, too, for the same reason.
I just say it's a lack of sleep. It just never goes away. So she was talking about, making decisions, and, if we are solely making decisions based from emotion, how that's not realistic, that feel the emotions, acknowledge them, process them, grieve them, let them go, and then look at the facts. What are the facts actually telling you? And we spend a lot of time talking about intuition and helping that guide, but that's not always the most solid force, right? To help you make decisions and to know what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah. I think sometimes when we're in a very emotional place, we need the logic of facts to bring us down to say, like,
to ground
okay,
us.
yeah, definitely. And, facts aren't everything, obviously. Like, our emotions matter and our feelings and our intuition, all of that matters. But it's definitely, especially in such an anxiety-inducing situation, it's easy for us to spin out if we're only listening to the emotional side, and being able to look at what are the facts here, what do we have to work with, I think is something that can bring us back down to earth.
Yeah.
Good wisdom.
Thanks for the reminder.
We got through that together.
Yeah. Just piece it all together.
All right. Well, I think that's all we have to say.
Yeah. We are we're carrying you all, in us, and we're having these conversations outside of what we're posting, and we just really wanted to take a minute to connect and let you know that we are thinking of you guys, and we're worried. We want to do what we can, and again, be a part of the solution and not add to the stress levels.
Yeah, our hearts are definitely with anybody who's pregnant right now, and we see the difficulty and want to help you find ways to cope. So we're here as a resource, and we hope that this is a resource that can give you at least a little bit of insight and some food for thought.
Maybe some hope.
Some hope and some power, because really nothing in life is ideal. Nothing. Everything, even things you think were ideal, sometimes they just turn out to not be ideal, and we have to find ways to find our power. And I think that's what birth really is all about, is digging deep and finding our power. So we're here if you have questions or thoughts, and we'll be back.
If you need resources, please reach out.
Okay. All right. Have a good day.
Thank you.